Ivory Coast, a vibrant country where stunning landscapes and bizarre traditions collide in a surprising celebration of life. From festivals in birthday suits celebrated to women in the middle of the night, chasing away evil spirits, to men with multiple loving wives. Get ready to dive into 15 eye-opening secrets about Ivory Coast that promise to shock you. 15. Urban legend of the Elephant Man. A chilling tale haunts the countryside of Ivory Coast, especially in the remote villages near Man and Aloha. The urban legend of the Elephant Man describes a creature that is half human, half elephant, wandering through the rural areas. According to local folklore, anyone who crosses paths with this mythical being is destined for misfortune or a tragic event. The story of the Elephant Man is deeply rooted in local traditions and serves as a cautionary tale, blending elements of fear with the region's rich cultural myths. 14. Polygamy. Say hello to my many wives. In some parts of Ivory Coast, it's been a long-standing tradition for men to have more than one wife, which people used to think was a way to show wealth or solve problems like infertility. But here's where it gets tricky. Even though it's culturally accepted by many, the law says only one marriage is allowed. Recently, some politicians tried to make polygamy legal just for men, but that upset a lot of folks, especially women's rights groups. They argue that it's not fair to women and would only make it harder for them to be seen as equals in society. In villages, some old rules still let people have these marriages, which adds to the confusion. Women in these setups often don't get the same rights or protection as they would in a one-on-one marriage, which isn't right. So, even though some see polygamy as a tradition, others believe it holds back progress for women and makes life tougher for them. 13. Child in the cocoa industry. Ivory Coast is the world's largest producer of cocoa, accounting for about 40% of global supply. Unfortunately, this booming industry has a dark side. Child labor remains a persistent issue in the cocoa farms of regions like San Pedro and Sucre, where children as young as 5 are involved in hazardous work. Despite international efforts and agreements to reduce child economic pressures and lack of enforcement make this problem difficult to eradicate. The children often work long crifice, handling sharp tools and heavy loads, which poses serious risks to their health and development. 12. Sacrifice for the gods. Let's talk about the Guro people in Ivory Coast and their fascinating rituals. The Guro have some unique traditions that involve dances and animal sacrifices, which they perform to please their deities and ensure the community's well-being. These rituals can be a bit graphic, as they often involve the animals believed to hold spiritual significance. Think of it as their way of connecting with the spiritual world and asking for protection and prosperity. The rituals are usually overseen by special leaders called Earth Masters, who help guide the community in these important practices. 11. The Night Festival. Drums, dancing, and exorcisms. Let me tell you about the Fête du Dipri in Gaumont, near Abidjan, Ivory Coast. It's a festival that kicks off at midnight, where women and children sneak out of their homes naked, ready to perform secret rituals to chase away evil spirits. They're not just having a late-night stroll. They're diving headfirst into a spiritual cleanse of the whole village. Now, when the sun comes out, the village chief makes his grand entrance, and that's when things really get wild. Drums start pounding like nobody's business, and before you know it, everyone's in a trance, moving like they're powered by something out of this world. This mystical frenzy keeps going strong until late afternoon the next day. The whole event is like a giant party with roots that go way back to the traditions of the Abidjan people from the 18th century. They've got some intense rituals like bathing in rivers, covering themselves in animal and drinking herbal brews to get into the spirit zone. People even perform mind-boggling acts like and then healing right before your eyes, all in the name of showing off their mystical abilities. 10. Disabled models strutting against the stigma. In Ivory Coast, the fashion show, Strong and Beautiful, hit the runway with 20 models with disabilities, proving that being in style is all about having confidence. Grace Beho, who lost her forearm in an accident, was also the founder of Mounion Foundation, which she used to uplift women. Leslie Antser and Nelly aka showed that they're more than ready to strut their stuff. Despite the usual taboos around disabilities in Ivory Coast, these models made it clear that beauty knows no boundaries. As consultant Abdoudramane Coulibaly put it, so I guess it's time for everyone to take a walk in their shoes, literally. 9. Largest church in the world. Yes, you heard that right. The Basilica of Our Lady of Peace in Yamoussoukro holds the Guinness World Record for being the largest cathedral on the planet, even bigger than St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City. Its massive domes, stained glass windows, and overall grandeur are both awe-inspiring and somewhat out of place in a country where many live in poverty. 8. They cannot live without music. In Ivory Coast, there's a fascinating tribe called the Beto people, who have a deep connection to music, integrating it into every aspect of their lives. For the Beto, music is more than just an art form. It's a way of expressing emotions, narrating stories, and even coping with life's challenges. Whether it's a joyous event like a birth or a wedding, or a solemn occasion like mourning a death, music plays a central role in their rituals and traditions. They believe that melodies and rhythms help bridge the gap between the physical world and the spiritual realm, offering comfort during tough times and enhancing joy during celebrations. Their use of instruments like drums, flutes, and vocal harmonies helps set the mood and pace for these occasions, turning even mundane tasks into musical expressions. This tradition is part of a broader cultural landscape in Ivory Coast, where music is a communal activity that unites people in shared experiences. 7. Celebrating independence with a twist. Every year on August 7th, Ivorians celebrate their independence from France. It's a day filled with parades, music, and national pride. But unlike the traditional pomp you might expect, Ivorians add their unique twist to the festivities, often blending humor and satire into their celebrations. It's not uncommon to see parades where participants dress up to mock politicians or poke fun at current events. 6. Ivory Coast's dual capital confusion. Did you know the country's government insists that everyone must use the French name Côte d'Ivoire in all languages, instead of translating it to Ivory Coast? They've made it a rule. Ivory Coast is unique in its political and economic landscape, having two official capital cities, Yamoussoukro and Abidjan. Yamoussoukro, the political capital, is home to significant government institutions and the famous Basilica of Our Lady of Peace. In contrast, Abidjan remains the country's economic powerhouse, filled with bustling markets, skyscrapers, and major corporations. This unusual setup often causes confusion among visitors and even locals, as both cities represent different facets of Ivorian identity and power, making it unclear which truly holds the nation's heart. 5. Family first, the dating interview. In Ivory Coast, dating isn't just a casual, hey, wanna grab a coffee? Instead, guys need to impress the girl's family first, almost like they're auditioning for a role in a movie. The family takes on the serious task of evaluating whether he's good enough to date their daughter. It's not just about charm. They want to make sure he's got the right intentions and values. While the guy is busy winning over the family, the girl often shows her affection by cooking delicious meals and even giving him thoughtful gifts. Think of it like a cooking competition where the stakes are love and admiration. This blend of respect, family dynamics, and culinary skills makes dating in Ivory Coast a unique and flavorful experience. Who knew romance could be served with a side of gourmet cooking? 4. Consumerism, a double-edged sword. In Côte d'Ivoire, consumerism is more than a preference. It's a powerful phenomenon reflecting the nation's resilience and aspirations. As the Ivorian middle class rises, there's a relentless pursuit of luxury and modernity, evident in Abidjan's upscale boutiques. For instance, during the launch of the Samsung Galaxy S8 in 2017, crowds camped out overnight to snag the latest model, showcasing a deep attachment to global brands. 3. Controlling women's body. Female genital mutilation, FGM, is a practice that has unfortunately been common in some parts of the Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, and other countries. It involves the partial or total removal of the external female genitalia for non-medical reasons. People often justify it as a cultural or traditional practice meant to control women's or mark a rite of passage into adulthood, but it has no health benefits and can cause severe pain, infections, complications in childbirth, and long-term psychological trauma. In recent years, there's been progress as laws have been passed to make FGM illegal in the Ivory Coast, and more education and advocacy groups are working to change attitudes, but it still persists in some communities due to cultural resistance and lack of awareness. 2. A serious issue. Côte d'Ivoire faces serious issues related to especially affecting women and children. Many children are for labor in agriculture and domestic work, and enforcement of existing laws is often insufficient. Efforts by local and international organizations continue to combat this pressing issue and protect vulnerable populations. 1. Beauty is pain, life in scars. All right, let's talk about scarification. This is a traditional practice in Ivory Coast, especially among women, where they intentionally their skin to create unique patterns, often on their breasts. These scars are more than just marks. They symbolize beauty, important life milestones, and tribal identity. Think of them as badges of honor that show strength and resilience. However, in today's world, people sometimes misunderstand these scars, which can lead to sensitive discussions about personal and cultural identity. Those who carry these markings often find themselves navigating a tricky relationship with their scars, feeling both pride in their heritage and the weight of societal perceptions. And that's the country that's as intriguing as it is unique. From its language and culture to its tribes and traditions, Ivory Coast is a place that leaves a lasting impression. If you're enjoying our adventure tales and are looking for a place where tradition meets modernity, where every day is a reason to dance, and where even death has a soundtrack, this is the country for you. What fact impressed you the most? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, keep exploring and don't forget to like and subscribe.